Hello, Mark Chigani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Mr. Yip Kin Yuen. Now, Mr. Yip, you were in the Legislative Council representing the education sector,
Yes.
but you, along with others, resigned. But you're now the Vice President of the Hong Kong Professional Teachers Union, right?
Right.
Happy New Year, first of all, and Happy New Year
Happy
to all
New
of
Year
you.
to you.
Happy New Year of the Ox. Now, big changes in education, right?
Right.
They're going to revamp liberal studies, and there will be a lot more emphasis on the national security law and national education, right? But I know you oppose it. Why?
Not really opposite. I think, well, if you're talking about national security, in many places of the world, they stress, national security. If you look at the United States these days, when they're talking about their relationship with China, many times they talk about national security. So I think it's okay to talk about national security. The only thing I'm thinking is when you are introducing the concept of national security into education, so it must be education itself. So by the term education, we are thinking about helping the young kids grow, helping them develop, and we would encourage them to ask questions. We would ask them to try new things. So I think, well, these days, especially when we are talking about modern education, we will encourage the students. But when we come to national security, often it brings about some sorts of connotations. You have to restrict the children, and if that is the case, that might be a problem. So I think we have to somehow reconcile the two, education and national security. In many places of the world, they stress national security.
So you don't
but
oppose
education can also be very free, very people can do not need to restrict people.
But then, if I remember correctly, the government says, yes, they want to introduce national security and national identity and national security law into some of the subjects in school, because they feel that Hong Kong people have gone astray. Young people don't respect the country, don't respect the motherland, and they need to start teaching them at a young age. What's wrong with that?
I think in Hong Kong, we have a long tradition that the teachers are very professional. We know what to do, and we know that we...
But they don't think that you know what to do. The government feels that the teachers are not doing a good job.
You're right. It seems that the government is blaming education, blaming the teachers all the time, especially after the social conflicts in the past 2 years. But I think, well, they have to, if they look into the real situation, teachers are basically very professional, and they would, when they touch on controversial issues, they would respect the students' idea, and they would know to give them information and materials of different perspectives. So, and what we want to do is to promote their critical thinking and also independent thinking. So that is not imposing a certain type of political ideology onto our young kids.
But what happened is that you're talking about critical thinking. I guess the government has a point, correct me if I'm wrong. They said that, the social unrest in 2019, right? Over 10,000 people were arrested. About a third of them, or thereabouts, were students. So there's got to be a reason why so many students went out there, some of them threw petrol bombs and so on. Is it because of the schools and too much critical thinking?
I don't think so. If you look back, the social unrest for the past 2 years, a large number of people were involved, and up to 10,000 according to the government figures.
Right?
And there are different ages. So,
But still, about a third of them are young kids.
and the population, one third of the population is young people. I think is
But why
very
would the young people
natural.
go out there and do that?
And then young people and the older people are the same. They are being, they're not happy with the situation, because of the, the extradition law and also, the police brutality, whatever. So people are not happy with that. So there are a lot of confrontation. And especially when the government is not listening to the people, when the people held 1 million people rally, 2 million people rally, but the government did not listen to it. So the social
So you don't
conflicts
think they were influenced by
escalated.
teachers?
Oh, it's nothing to do with the teachers. And up to now, you know that, the government is trying a lot of effort to try to, encourage people to complain, and they did the investigation. So up to now, no case actually were about, teachers inciting students to join in those protests. So there is no case at all. So
But some teachers were disqualified, and
they disqualified
complaints against quite a few teachers.
for other reasons, and there is no incitement at all. So I think when we come to the education sector, what I think is that the government is trying to put the blame on education and teachers, but actually the root cause of the social conflicts is not lying in the education sector.
What is the root
cause
cause?
of the government's mishandling of the issues. They made huge mistakes on not listening to the people, not responding to the people, and so people are angry. I think that kind of they try to ignore the kind of true picture.
Well,
but
you were a teacher. And you know teachers very well because you're with
Yes.
the Professional Teachers Union. How are teachers going to deal with this? This is now an overhaul of the education system. They're going to put emphasis and the focus on the national security law, on national education, on patriotism. How are teachers going to deal with it? Because they have to. How are they going to deal with it?
I think the first thing is the government has to deal with it properly. When it comes to the national security education, the Education Bureau released some documents on February the 4th, and so they kick-start the whole thing. And do you know that on February the 4th, they issued a few documents.
Right.
How many pages are there?
No, I didn't count how many pages. I read it, but how many pages are there?
There are 87 pages altogether, and we have not yet counted the Constitution and Basic Law, teaching package, which is I think hundreds of pages. So it is introducing a lot of things.
Have you read all of those pages? Hundreds of pages?
I tried, but I know that many teachers and principals do not have the time because it was Lunar New Year.
Right.
And we cannot have the time to absorb the whole things. And many of the documents just touch on topics. So there might be some other details coming on. And so I think when we were told that there will be national security education, my thinking was it should be straightforward. There is a new law, national security law, coming in, so we have to introduce that in our education system. That is very legitimate. So this is about the knowledge about the law and the knowledge about national security itself. So and the law was about 4 types of crimes.
Yeah, terrorism and colluding with foreign forces, right?
Yes, these 4.
No, these 4 types of crime. I read some of the documents that came out.
Yeah.
And it said that children as young as 6 must learn about these 4 crimes, right? How do you teach a 6-year-old about secession, subversion, terrorism, and colluding with foreign forces?
It's quite difficult.
How would you teach a 6-year-old about that?
I think we can find ways to turn those very complicating things into in a simple way. I think that is the professionalism
Has the government
of
advised
teachers.
you how to do it in a simple way?
But I think the problem is yes, actually, the teachers are very skillful in doing that. For example, when we are talking about gravity is a very complicated concept. But we introduce it for young kids, of Newton and the apple. So that is about gravity. So this is a very simple version of gravity we teach for young kids. So yes, we can do that. But the problem is when we are doing that kind of interpretation, we are not sure whether it fits the expectation of the government. And because this is so sensitive, and in the documents they say you are going to be held accountable to that. So I think most of the teachers will be afraid of.
I'm going to pick that up right after the break. See you soon. Don't go away. Thanks for being with us. This is Straight Talk. With me today is Mr. Kin Yuen. You were a legislative counselor, representing the education sector, also Professional Teachers Union, vice president. Now, before the break, you talked about there are certain areas of national security in schools that teachers may be afraid.
Yes.
Why are they afraid?
I think because the law itself, and also when we are interpreting the law, because it's vague and ambiguous. So, for example, when it is about colluding with foreign powers.
I was going to ask you this. Colluding with it might be easy to explain subversion, secession, or terrorism, but colluding with foreign forces. Now, this term came about when certain legislative counselors, not you, but others, had gone to the U.S. and asked the U.S. or the U.K. to help promote democracy in Hong Kong, right? And then came about this term, colluding with foreign forces, right? So now, if you go to the U.S. and says, be tough on Hong Kong, then you're colluding with foreign forces, right? How do you teach that to a 6-year-old kid?
I think the concept itself is not clear. This is the basic problem. And for example, if I make friends with a foreigner, is it colluding? No, it should not be.
It should not be, right?
It should not be. But if I make friends and then talk about certain things, and if the friend is a foreign politician, and so will it be considered some sorts of collusion? If I like the Facebook page of a foreign politician, is that collusion of with...
Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Is it? I mean...
So if you don't know, if I don't know, and teachers do not know, and how can teachers answer?
There are some teachers who are foreigners in Hong Kong, right?
Right.
There are some foreign teachers in Hong Kong, right? So if a student discusses with the teacher about politics, about democracy, and so on, would that be colluding with foreign forces? You're talking with your teacher.
You're asking me, and I do not know how to... my answer would be no, right away, no, that is not collusion. But I think people would be very...
So that's why you say teachers are anxious.
Anxious, whether that would be regarded as...
But why don't you just seek some clarification from the government? I'm sure they'll give you the clarification.
Yes, I think we should seek clarification, and the government should give very clear clarification. Yes, we have been asking, and I further asked for a public consultation. Actually, I think, I just told you that there are 87 pages of... So you have to come out, talk to the press in a press conference and also talk to the
But
teachers,
the
practitioners.
education secretary did come out and explain it, right, at the press conference.
No, there was no press conference.
He went to radio shows. to
Yes,
explain
only
it?
radio show, but one hour or so with and we do not have the chance to raise our questions. So I think we need a period of public consultation. In that consultation period, they should give very clear explanation to guide us through the documents.
But the government has already ruled out consultation.
I think they have ruled it out, but I hope that they will reconsider it, because with a public consultation period, they can explain that, and also they can receive feedback. And whether those things should be taught to our 6-year-old kids, it's very arbitrary, and we can talk together, and the teaching practitioner and also parents would have their ideas, would have their wisdom to contribute.
There's another thing I wanted to ask you. Incorporating national education and national security into, I think there are 7 subjects, 6 or 7 subjects that they want to incorporate it into, including biology and music. Now, as a former teacher, how do you incorporate national security into biology?
I've read through the 10-page guidelines on biology, how to do national security education.
How do you do that? I'm curious.
I am also curious about that, because I just told you that when we were told that there will be national security education coming in, it should be very simple, straightforward. The 4 crimes, we will talk about that in the
But the thing is,
but it should not be related to biology. It's getting too
or music.
far, right?
Would you prefer that there's just one subject, that is national education, national security law, rather than not having a particular subject that's national security law, but incorporating into other subjects?
But I think the problem is that, when we were thinking about, this is the matter of the national security law that it was in Hong Kong. Actually, in the Education Bureau, they are thinking about another legislation, that is the national security law in mainland. Mm-hmm. So they are making reference to that, and so they come up with 13 areas of national security. So that becomes 87 pages.
Would you prefer that there's just one subject, that is national security? It's simple, you teach it, and that's it.
I think we should confine it to what we should focus. That is the 4 crimes. That is the general
what
idea
should we
of
focus on?
The 4 crimes, and also the general idea of national security. So we should not touch on a very large range of areas, ranging from political security, into internet security, into resources, energy security, and so on. So it becomes the teaching content of geography, of biology, because in biology we're talking about pandemic, mm-hmm. and pandemic is actually a global issue, right. And because of that reference, they would treat that as national security issue. So I don't think
how can the pandemic be treated as national security?
Oh, it's just because pandemic.
It's affecting the whole world.
Even energy, is affecting national security. I think I can understand that.
Okay.
But I think that is only one perspective at looking at things, and there are different perspectives, and we should also treat it as a global issue.
At what age should 6-year-olds have to learn about the 4 crimes? At what age do you think students should start learning?
I think in secondary.
Not in primary school.
It's difficult to tell, especially about collusion with foreign forces. I think it's extremely difficult.
Now, another thing that I know is, if I remember correctly, if I read it correctly, is in teaching about national security legislation and national identity and so on, news will not be allowed to be discussed. Is that right?
I haven't come across that statement in the document, but it might be there. But
I came across it. I read it somewhere, so I was quite curious. I thought you might know. I mean, if something happens news-wise in Hong Kong, like perhaps the arrest of some people on national security grounds, and whether it is right or wrong, or whether a judge makes a ruling whether this is right or wrong, is that allowed?
The Education Bureau people have talked about this, because in the liberal studies, in the subject of liberal studies, they did mention that the news should not be used. They should discuss issues that are already defined. So no old things, events of past time would be better.
So things that are defined you can discuss. But if news says some Hong Kong people support the law, some don't support the law, can that be taught that there is disagreement on whether there should be such
I think
a law?
this should be discussed. So
But is it allowed?
I doubt whether they tend not to promote that kind of. But when it's I'm not sure whether they are going to forbid us. And actually, I think if we come to pandemic, for example, it is current issues. Why should we not discuss that? That should be discussed.
Pandemic is not allowed to be discussed in.
If that is defined as current issue, according to that logic,
Then you're going to discuss it.
I'm not sure whether.
Well,
there's a lot of ambiguity.
I've only got a minute left, so I just want to ask you this. This will start pretty soon, right? Perhaps in the next semester.
Next year.
Yeah. All right. So it'll start pretty soon. How do you see future generations? If it starts at 6 years old, all the way up to high school, right? So how do you see the next few generations? Will they lose their ability for critical thinking?
I'm afraid that it might be the tendency, because the whole idea is to monitor closely and to restrict. But I think education needs a lot of encouragement. So I hope.
You think critical thinking will be gone in future generations?
I think critical thinking will be there. When people receive different information, they will compare, they will contrast, and they will think. But if that is, we have a proper way to do it in the formal curriculum, we will lead that to better critical thinking, or it would be.
But they still have the internet, and they can still go beyond the classroom and think about what they want to think about, right?
But they will lose the opportunity to do it within the classroom with the guidance from the teachers.
All right.
So that is the bad part.
Okay, I've got Andrew right there. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and Happy New Year to all. Happy New Year to you.
To you too.